The Empire had conquered 37 star systems in less than 10 years. Their warships were the biggest in the galaxy. Their soldiers were the strongest and the fastest. Every planet that saw their fleet in the sky knew that surrender was the only choice. Fighting back meant death. When they turned their eyes toward Earth, everyone in the galaxy expected another easy victory. The humans were young. They had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. Their ships were small. Their weapons were simple. The Galactic Council gave them 6 months before total defeat. 3 years later, the war was still going. They had lost more ships fighting humans than in any other war in their long history. For every human city they burned, the humans destroyed 10 of their cruisers. For every planet they occupied, they paid with thousands of soldiers. The humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They did not surrender. They did not run. They hid in mountains and forests and ruined cities, and they kept fighting until there was no one left to fight. High Emperor finally called for peace, not because he wanted it, but because his generals told him the truth. If the war continued, they would win eventually, but the cost would break their empire. Peace in tradition required a special bond, a marriage between the two peoples. Blood joined to blood. It was an old custom, older than their empire, and it was sacred. Princess volunteered. She was the third daughter of the emperor. She was young by standards, only 90 years old. Her skin was the color of silver mixed with pale blue, and her eyes were like golden amber that caught the light. She was tall and strong, trained in combat since childhood, educated in politics and diplomacy and war. She believed in duty above all things. When her father needed someone to marry a human, she stepped forward without hesitation. Now she stood in a cold, ceremonial chamber on a space station orbiting Neptune. The station belonged to neither side. It was neutral ground, built specifically for this moment. Diplomats from both species filled the room, along with observers from the Galactic Council. Everyone wanted to see this historic event. Wore the traditional white robes of a bride. Her silver hair was arranged in complex braids that had taken her servants 3 hours to complete. She looked beautiful and dignified, exactly as a princess should look. She did not feel beautiful or dignified. She felt afraid. Not of the humans. She was a warrior, and she did not fear death or pain. What she feared was the unknown. She was about to bind her life to a creature from a species she did not understand. She would live among them, eat their food, breathe their air, share a home with one of them. She did not know if she could do it. Her advisors had told her what to expect. The humans were sending a soldier. His name was Daniel Cole. They had no picture of him, no detailed records. The humans had been very secretive about their choice. Her advisors were angry about this. They said it was an insult to send someone so unimportant, someone with no title or rank or family name. Did not care about titles. She only wanted to know what kind of person she would spend her life with. The doors at the far end of the chamber opened, and the human delegation entered. There were 5 of them. 4 wore formal military uniforms covered with medals and ribbons. They were clearly important people, generals and admirals. They walked with the confidence of leaders. The 5th one walked behind them. He was tall for a human, about 6 feet. His hair was dark brown, almost black, cut short in a simple style. His eyes were brown, an ordinary shade that reminded of tree bark. He wore a plain black uniform with no medals, no decorations, nothing to show who he was or what he had done. His face was calm and quiet. This was Daniel Cole. Watched him as he approached the altar where she waited. He moved differently from the others. The generals walked like men who wanted everyone to see them. Daniel walked like a man who wanted no one to notice him at all. His steps were quiet and precise. His body was relaxed but ready, like a predator resting between hunts. Her warrior instincts noticed these things, even when her conscious mind did not understand them. The human ambassador, a woman named, stepped forward and bowed to in the fashion. She had studied their customs carefully. "Your Highness," the ambassador said, "on behalf of Earth and all human territories, we present Daniel Cole as the groom for this union of peace." His chief advisor, an old named Al, stepped forward with anger in his eyes. "This is your choice. A man with no rank, no honors. You insult the Emperor's daughter." Ambassador smiled politely. "Mr. Cole is exactly who we wish to send. We believe he will be an excellent husband to the princess." "He is no one, he is nothing. He is our choice." Al wanted to argue more but raised her hand to silence him. She was tired of politics. She wanted this ceremony finished. "Let him come forward," she said. Daniel walked up to the altar and stood before her. He was close enough that she could see the small details of his face. There were tiny scars near his jaw, faint lines that most people would never notice. His eyes met hers without fear or challenge. He simply looked at her, studying her the same way she studied him. "Princess," he said. His voice was quiet and calm. "I know this is not what either of us wanted. You did not choose me and I did not choose you, but I promise I will do my best to make this bearable for both of us." She had expected many things. Anger, perhaps, fear, resentment. She had not expected kindness. "You are not afraid of me," she observed. "Should I be?" She thought about it. She was stronger than him, faster than him, trained to kill since before his grandparents were born. By every measure, she was the dangerous one in this room. "Perhaps not," she admitted. A small smile touched his lips. It made him look younger, softer, almost handsome in the strange human way. The ceremony began. A priest spoke the ancient words of binding. A human official read from their legal documents, and Daniel repeated the required phrases. They signed their names to papers and pressed their hands to electronic seals. Through it all, Daniel remained calm and patient. He did not complain about the length of the rituals or the strangeness of the customs. He simply did what was required. When the priest declared them bound, felt something shift inside her. She was no longer just a princess. She was a wife, the wife of a human. The reception afterward was formal and awkward. Diplomats from both sides made speeches about peace and hope and new beginnings. Food was served, strange human dishes alongside familiar ones. Daniel stayed close to her but did not hover. He seemed to understand that she needed space. Later that night, they boarded a human ship that would take them to Earth. Their quarters were small but comfortable. 2 beds, she noticed with relief. The humans had been thoughtful about that. Found Daniel in the observation deck, a room with large windows that showed the stars outside. He sat alone in the darkness, watching the universe drift past. She walked over and stood beside him. "What did you do before this?" she asked. He turned to look at her. Something moved in his eyes, something deep and heavy that she could not identify. "I was a peacekeeper," he said. "A peacekeeper." Someone who helps maintain peace, stops conflicts before they start, protects people who cannot protect themselves. It sounded like a noble profession, but something in his voice told her there was more to the story. "And before that," she pressed. Daniel turned back to the stars. For a long moment he did not speak. When he finally answered, his voice was very quiet. "Before that, I was something else." He did not explain, and she did not ask again. But as she watched him stare into the endless darkness of space, she felt a strange certainty growing in her heart. The humans had not sent her a common soldier. They had sent her something far more important, something they wanted to keep close to her for reasons she did not yet understand. She returned to her bed but did not sleep for a long time. She lay in the darkness, listening to the hum of the ship's engines, wondering what kind of man she had married. Outside the window, Earth grew larger against the stars. 6 months passed on Earth. Had expected many things when she imagined her new life. She had expected grand palaces and constant surveillance. She had expected to be paraded before crowds as a symbol of peace, photographed and interviewed and studied like an exotic animal. She had expected to hate every moment of it. Instead, she found herself living in a small house on the edge of a city called Portland. The house was simple: 2 floors, white walls, a red roof. There was a small garden in the back where vegetables grew in neat rows. The street was quiet, lined with similar houses where ordinary humans lived their ordinary lives. It rained often in Portland, gray skies and gentle water that reminded of the misty mountains on her. No one bothered her here. The neighbors knew who she was, of course. Everyone on Earth knew about the alien princess who had married a human for peace. But the people of Portland seemed to understand that she wanted privacy. They waved when they saw her but did not stare. They said hello but did not ask questions. It was strange, it was unexpected. It was, she slowly realized, exactly what she needed. Daniel was a good husband, in ways she had not anticipated. He taught her to cook human food, standing beside her in the small kitchen, showing her how to chop vegetables and season meat. His hands were patient and steady as he guided hers. He never laughed when she made mistakes, even when she burned the rice so badly that they had to throw the pot away. He taught her to tend the garden, explaining which plants needed more water and which ones preferred shade. He showed her how to pull weeds without disturbing the roots of the good plants. He seemed to find genuine peace in the simple act of making things grow. He answered her endless questions about Earth without complaint. Why did humans keep animals as companions? What was the purpose of the strange music that played from shops? Why did people drink coffee when it tasted so bitter? He explained everything calmly, never making her feel foolish for not knowing. During the days, Daniel worked from home. He had a job with something called the Department of Veteran Affairs. His work involved talking to other humans who had fought in the war against her people. He helped them adjust to peace, helped them find jobs and homes and reasons to keep living. She often heard him on video calls, his voice gentle and understanding as he listened to angry or broken people tell their stories. She asked him about it one evening while they ate dinner together. "Why do you do this work? It must be painful to hear such things every day." Daniel set down his fork and thought about the question. "Because someone helped me once when I needed it. Now I help others. That is how healing works. You receive kindness and then you pass it on." Do not think this way. We believe that warriors should be strong on their own. Asking for help is weakness. And how many of your warriors suffer in silence because of that belief? Had no answer. She had known many soldiers who returned from battle with broken minds, unable to sleep, unable to feel joy. They were told to be strong. Most of them drank themselves to death or found other ways to end their pain. It had never occurred to her that there might be another way. "You were in the war," she said finally, "against my people." Daniel's eyes met hers. "Yes." "Did you kill?" His jaw tightened slightly, the only sign of emotion. "Yes." She should have felt anger. She should have felt horror or disgust. Instead, she felt only curiosity. This man had killed her people, perhaps people she knew, yet he sat across from her eating dinner as if it was nothing. "How many?" she asked. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was flat and empty. "Enough that I stopped counting." "Do you feel guilt?" "Every day." "Then why did you do it?" He looked at her, and she saw something old and tired in his brown eyes, something that had seen too much and carried too heavy a burden. "Because if I did not, others would have died. My friends, my family, innocent people who never wanted any part of the war." He picked up his fork again, though he did not eat. "War is not about hate, it is about survival. I did not kill your people because I hated them. I killed them because I had no other choice." She thought about his words for many days afterward. The neighbor who lived next door was an old woman named. She was 83 years old, small and wrinkled, with white hair and bright blue eyes that missed nothing. She had lived in this house for 50 years. raised 3 children here, buried her husband 5 years ago. Was the first human to truly welcome. She came to the door one morning with a plate of cookies, small brown circles with pieces of chocolate inside. She smiled up at without any fear or discomfort. "Hello, dear. I thought you might like something sweet." Took the cookies, uncertain what to say. "Thank you, this is very kind." "Nonsense, that is what neighbors do," peered past her into the house. "Is Daniel treating you well? If he is not, you tell me. I will set him straight." Despite herself, smiled. The idea of this tiny old woman scolding Daniel was amusing. Over the following weeks became something like a friend. She taught to play card games, simple ones at first and then more complex ones. She told stories about her life, about her husband who had fought in something called World War II, about her children who now lived in distant cities, about the changes she had seen in her long years. "Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years," explained one afternoon while they played cards. "Every generation thinks they will be the last to see war. Every generation is wrong. Daniel's generation finally got to fight someone other than themselves." "Does that not make you angry?" asked. "That your people died fighting mine?" Laid down her cards and took his hand in her own. Her skin was paper-thin and spotted with age, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Honey, if we held grudges for every war, we would never stop being angry. I lost friends in that war. Good people who did not deserve to die. But you did not start that war. Neither did Daniel. You are both just trying to live now. That is all any of us can do." Did not fully understand human wisdom, but she knew kindness when she saw it. As the months passed, she began to notice things about her husband. He woke before dawn every morning and ran for miles through the rain and fog. She watched him from the window once, moving through the gray light like a ghost. His pace never slowed, his breathing never labored. He ran with a mechanical efficiency that seemed inhuman. He heard sounds that she missed, even with her superior senses. A car door closing 3 streets away. Footsteps on the sidewalk before anyone appeared. He was always aware of everything around him, even when he seemed to be relaxing. She saw him move in the kitchen once when a pot started to fall from the counter. His hand caught it faster than her eyes could follow. He set it back without comment, but she had seen. No normal human was that fast. And the scars. She had glimpsed them once when he came out of the shower, thinking she was asleep. Strange patterns covered his back and arms, precise lines that did not match any weapon she knew. They looked almost surgical, as if someone had cut him open many times with great precision and then closed him again. One night she woke to find the bed beside her empty. She found Daniel sitting at the window, perfectly still, staring at nothing. His eyes were open but seeing something far away. "Bad dreams?" she asked softly. "Just memories." His voice was rough, like he had been crying, though his face was dry. She sat beside him without asking permission. For a long moment, they sat together in silence, watching the rain streak down the window. "I am beginning to think," she said carefully, "that the humans sent me someone far more valuable than a common soldier." Daniel turned to look at her. In the dim light, his brown eyes seemed darker, deeper. "What makes you say that?" "The way you move, the way you hear and see things you should not, the scars on your body." She paused. "The way you sometimes seem less like a man and more like a weapon wearing human skin." He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was very soft. "Would it matter if I was something more than human?" Considered the question. She thought about the kindness he had shown her, the patience and the gentleness. She thought about the garden and the cookies and the quiet evenings together. She thought about the man who helped broken soldiers find peace. "No," she said finally, "I do not think it would." Daniel's hand found hers in the darkness. His fingers were warm and strong as they wrapped around her own. "Thank you," he whispered. She did not know what he was thanking her for, but she held his hand until morning, and somehow that seemed to be enough. The attack came on a Tuesday morning. Was in the garden pulling weeds from between the tomato plants. The sun had finally appeared after 3 days of rain, and the air was warm and sweet. Birds sang in the trees. Somewhere down the street, children laughed and played. It was a perfect day, the kind of day that made her understand why humans loved their planet so much. Then the sky turned red. She looked up and saw fire. Weapons fire, plasma bolts streaking down from above. The bright streaks she knew so well from her childhood, from training exercises and war footage. Weapons. Ships descended through the clouds. Warships, their hulls painted with colors she did not recognize, not the silver and blue of her father's fleet. These ships were marked with crimson and gold, the colors of general. Felt her blood turn cold. Her father's most ambitious rival, a general who believed the peace treaty was a mistake, who had argued loudly that humans should be exterminated rather than negotiated with. Her father had removed him from command 3 years ago, but clearly he had been building his own forces in secret. This was a coup. Daniel appeared beside her so suddenly that she did not see him move. One moment she was alone in the garden. The next moment he was there, already wearing combat gear, his hands gripping her arms. Inside now. His voice was different, harder, colder, like metal scraping against metal. "Daniel, what is happening?" "Later, move." He pulled her toward the house as explosions rocked the neighborhood. She heard screaming from somewhere nearby. Saw a house 3 doors down collapse under plasma fire, the walls melting like wax. House. Tried to stop, tried to run toward the flames, but Daniel's grip was like iron. "She might be alive," cried. "You cannot help her if you are dead. Move." He dragged her into the house and through a door she had never noticed before. Behind it was a stairway leading down into darkness. They descended into a basement she had not known existed. Lights flickered on automatically, revealing a room that made her stop and stare. Weapons covered the walls, human weapons and other things she did not recognize, rifles and pistols and blades of every size, armor hung in racks, cases of ammunition were stacked in neat rows. This was not the basement of a simple house. This was an armory. "Stay here," Daniel ordered. He was already moving along the walls, selecting weapons with quick efficiency. A rifle went over his shoulder. Pistols were holstered at his hips. Strange devices she could not identify were clipped to his belt. "Daniel, there are hundreds of them. I saw at least 30 ships. You cannot possibly fight them alone." He stopped moving and turned to face her, and she saw that his eyes had changed. The warmth was gone. The gentleness that she had grown to love was nowhere to be seen. Something else looked out at her from behind those brown eyes. Something cold and sharp and utterly without mercy. Something that made every warrior instinct in her body scream danger. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but it carried a weight that pressed against her chest. "I need you to understand something. Everything I told you was true. I was a peacekeeper. I did help other soldiers. I did want a quiet life." He picked up a weapon from the wall, something sleek and black that hummed with power she could feel from across the room. "But before that, before the war, before the treaties, before any of it, I was something else." "What were you?" He walked toward the stairs, checking his weapons as he moved. His body seemed different now, larger somehow, more dangerous, like a predator that had been pretending to be tame. The humans have a saying, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." He paused at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at her. "Your people thought they were conquering a primitive species. They never asked why we held our own against them so well. They never asked what we were hiding." Outside, another explosion shook the house. Dust fell from the ceiling. The screaming was louder now. "Daniel, what are you?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only a terrible sadness mixed with something like relief. I am what humanity creates when it decides something needs to die. And then he was gone, moving up the stairs faster than her eyes could follow. Stood alone in the basement armory, surrounded by enough weapons to equip a small army. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. She was a warrior princess of the Empire, trained since childhood to fear nothing. She was afraid now. Not of the invasion, not of soldiers. She was afraid of what she had just seen in her husband's eyes. She waited exactly 3 minutes. She counted each second, forcing herself to be patient. Then she grabbed a plasma rifle from the wall and headed up the stairs. She was not going to hide in a basement while her world burned. The street outside was chaos. Smoke filled the air, thick and black. Bodies lay on the sidewalk, humans and alike. Soldiers in crimson and gold armor moved through the destruction, shooting anyone they found. They were not taking prisoners. They were not offering surrender. This was extermination. Moved carefully, using the smoke as cover. She was still wearing her gardening clothes, which helped her blend in. No one expected a princess to be dressed like a human farmer. She heard weapons fire ahead, not the steady rhythm of an execution. This was combat. Someone was fighting back. She crept forward until she could see the source of the fighting. Daniel stood in the middle of the street. 12 soldiers had surrounded him. Elite troops she saw from their armor markings, the best of forces. They were firing at Daniel from all sides, plasma bolts screaming through the air. None of them hit. Daniel moved like nothing she had ever seen. He was faster than any human should be, faster than most. He dodged and wove through the weapon's fire like it was rain, finding the gaps between the bolts, slipping through spaces that should have been too small. And he was killing them. His rifle barked 3 times. 3 soldiers fell, holes burned through their helmets. He dropped the rifle as he ran, pulling the pistols from his hips. 2 more soldiers went down. A 6th turned to run and died with a blade in his back, a blade that Daniel had thrown without looking. The remaining 6 soldiers tried to regroup, but Daniel was already among them. His hands moved in blurs. Necks snapped. Armor was torn away like paper. A soldier twice his size was lifted off the ground and thrown through a wall. In less than 30 seconds, all 12 were dead. Daniel did not pause to catch his breath. He simply picked up more weapons from the fallen soldiers and kept moving. Followed him through the burning streets of Portland. She watched him destroy an armored transport, climbing up its legs while it tried to shake him off, cutting through its hull with a blade that glowed white-hot, killing the pilot with his bare hands. She watched him fight his way through a squad of 30 soldiers, leaving a trail of bodies behind him. When he ran out of ammunition, he used the weapons of his enemies. When those broke, he used anything he could find. A piece of metal from a destroyed car, a chunk of concrete from a collapsed building, his own fists. She watched him take down a heavy combat walker, one of the most dangerous weapons in the arsenal. He dodged its plasma cannons, climbed its leg, tore open its cockpit, and killed the operator inside. The whole thing took less than 2 minutes. More ships descended, more soldiers poured into the streets, hundreds of them, then thousands. Daniel kept fighting. Hour after hour, he moved through the city, killing everything in his path. He did not rest. He did not slow down. He did not show any sign of fatigue or pain, even though could see wounds on his body, burns and cuts that should have stopped any normal person. She saw him take a plasma bolt to the shoulder. He stumbled, then kept moving. She saw a blade cut across his ribs. He broke the arm of the soldier who held it and kept fighting. She saw wounds that would kill any human, and she watched them close before her eyes. He was healing, regenerating. His flesh knit itself together as she watched. Daniel Cole was not human, or not entirely human. He was something else, something created, something designed for exactly this purpose. He was a weapon in human form. By dawn, the streets were silent. Found him in the ruins of what had been a park. Bodies surrounded him, dozens of them, hundreds of them. His clothes were shredded, soaked in blood both red and blue. He stood perfectly still, his chest heaving as he breathed. She walked toward him slowly, stepping over the dead. "Daniel." He turned. For a long, terrible moment she did not recognize him. His eyes were empty, his face blank. He looked at her without seeing her. Then something flickered. Recognition. Humanity returning to his eyes like light filling an empty room. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was hoarse, raw from hours of silence. Stared at him, at the blood covering his body, at the carnage surrounding him, at the man she had married standing in the middle of a battlefield he had created alone. And she started to laugh. It was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone whose understanding of the world had shattered into a million pieces. "You just killed an army," she said. "You just killed an entire army by yourself, and you ask if I am hurt." Daniel walked toward her slowly. His movements were careful, controlled, giving her every chance to run away. He stopped a few feet from her and waited. "I should explain," he said quietly. "Yes, you should." So he told her about the Genesis program, about the 12 soldiers who had been created to fight the invasion, about the experiments that had made them stronger, faster, harder to kill, about the things that had been taken from them in exchange for the power they had been given. "I am not entirely human anymore," he said when he finished. "I have not been for years." Looked at him, at the man who had taught her to cook and garden, at the man who helped broken soldiers find peace, at the man who held her hand in the darkness when the nightmares came. "Why did you marry me?" she asked. "Why pretend to be ordinary?" Daniel closed his eyes. When he opened them again, she saw something she had never seen before: tears. "Because I wanted to be ordinary," he whispered. "I wanted to be a man who grew vegetables and cooked dinner and had quiet mornings with his wife. I wanted to forget what I am." Above them, human warships filled the sky. They were too late for the battle, but in time to see its aftermath. Communications devices crackled with reports from around the world. Portland, New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, every city that had been attacked was reporting the same thing. The Genesis soldiers had awakened, and the invasion had been destroyed. The world had changed overnight. News spread across Earth and beyond within hours. The invasion by general had been crushed, not by armies or fleets, but by 12 individuals. 12 human soldiers who had been hiding in plain sight for years, living ordinary lives, waiting for a threat that required their awakening. The Genesis program was no longer a secret. Sat in a military hospital, wrapped in a thermal blanket, drinking something warm that the human doctors had given her. She was not injured, but they insisted on examining her anyway. They were very thorough, these human medical professionals, very careful. Daniel was in another room being examined by a different team. The doctors who worked on him were different from the others. They wore special badges and spoke in quiet voices and looked at Daniel with a mixture of fear and respect. A human general came to speak with her. His name was Christopher Hayes, and he was old, his hair white and his face lined with decades of worry, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "Princess," he said, sitting down across from her, "I apologize for the deception. We should have told you the truth about your husband before the wedding." "Why did you not?" The general sighed. "Because we did not know if we could trust you. The peace was new. Your people had been trying to kill us for 3 years. We could not risk revealing our greatest secret to someone who might share it with our enemies." Understood. She did not like it, but she understood. "So you gave me one of your weapons and waited to see if I would betray you. We gave you one of our finest men and hoped you would grow to care for each other." He paused. "We did not expect you to fall in love with him, but we hoped." Love, was that what this was? Thought about the months she had spent with Daniel, the quiet mornings and the gentle conversations, The way he made her feel safe, even before she knew what he truly was. The way her heart had broken when she saw him standing in the ruins, covered in blood, asking if she was hurt. Yes, she supposed it was love. "Tell me about the Genesis program," she said. "Tell me everything." General Hayes told her. 20 years ago, when the threat became clear, humanity had faced a terrible choice. They could not match the military in conventional warfare. Their ships were smaller, their weapons weaker, their soldiers slower and weaker. Victory through normal means was impossible. So they created something abnormal. The Genesis program took 12 volunteers, 12 soldiers who agreed to be transformed into something more than human. They were enhanced at the genetic level, their DNA rewritten to make them stronger and faster and harder to kill. They were trained in every form of combat known to humanity, and several that humanity invented specifically for fighting. They were conditioned to fight without rest, without mercy, without hesitation. The process took 5 years. By the time it was complete, the 12 soldiers were no longer human in any normal sense. They could run for days without stopping. They could survive wounds that would kill any normal person. They could heal from injuries in minutes that should have taken months. They could see in darkness, hear sounds from miles away, react faster than the eye could follow. They were weapons, living weapons shaped like humans but designed for one purpose only: to kill. "We deployed them sparingly during the war," General Hayes explained. "Small operations, special missions. We never let your people see what they could truly do. We wanted them to think they were fighting ordinary humans. We wanted them to underestimate us." Why not use them openly and end the war faster? Because we knew the war would end eventually. And when it did, we did not want the galaxy to know what we had created. We wanted peace, not fear. Shook her head. "You are a strange species. You create the most terrible weapons imaginable, and then you hide them because you want peace." "Is that so strange?" The general smiled sadly. "Every parent wants their children to live in a better world than they did. We created the Genesis soldiers so our children would not have to fight, and then we hid them so our children would not have to be afraid." Daniel came to find her an hour later. He looked different in the harsh hospital lights. Cleaner, his wounds healed and his blood washed away. He wore simple gray clothes that the military had given him. He looked almost normal, almost human, except for the way he moved. That perfect, predatory efficiency that she now recognized. "They want to debrief me," he said, sitting down beside her. "Ask questions about what happened. It will take a few hours." "I will wait." He looked at her with something like wonder in his eyes. "You are not afraid of me, even now after everything you saw." Thought about what she had witnessed, the speed and the violence and the absolute precision of his killing, the bodies piled in the streets, the way he had torn through an army like a blade through paper. "I have seen many frightening things in my life," she said. "Battles and storms and monsters from the depths of space. I was raised to face fear and overcome it." She reached out and took his hand. "But I have never been afraid of you, Daniel. Not when I thought you were ordinary, and not now that I know what you truly are. I am a monster. You are a man who became a monster to protect the people he loves. There is a difference." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers, closing his eyes. "I do not deserve you," he whispered. "Perhaps not, but you have me anyway." They stayed like that for a while, forehead to forehead, hand in hand. Two people from different worlds, bound together by chance and politics, and something that had grown into love. Over the following days, more information emerged about the attack. General had planned his coup for years. He had gathered supporters in secret, building a fleet and an army loyal only to him. His plan was simple: attack Earth simultaneously at dozens of locations, kill as many humans as possible, and restart the war. With enough death and destruction, he believed, The peace treaty would collapse and they would have no choice but to resume their conquest. He had not known about the Genesis soldiers. Reports came in from around the world. In London, a Genesis soldier named Samuel Burke had held a bridge for 6 hours against 2,000 enemy troops. In Tokyo, a woman named had destroyed an entire assault force with nothing but a combat knife in her bare hands. In Moscow, a man named Peter had taken down 18 combat walkers by himself. The invasion had been crushed in less than 12 hours. Himself had been captured in Beijing, found hiding in the wreckage of his command ship. He had surrendered without resistance, his face pale with shock. He had expected to face human armies, human fleets. He had not expected to face demons in human skin. Went to see him in his cell. The general looked old and broken behind the energy barrier. His crimson and gold uniform was torn and dirty. His eyes, which had once burned with ambition, were empty now. "Princess," he said when he saw her, "come to gloat." "I came to understand." She stood before him, arms crossed. "Why did you do this? You knew the war was over. You knew peace was possible." "Peace?" He spat the word like poison. "There is no peace with humans. They are vermin, insects. They should have been exterminated, not negotiated with. And yet your extermination force was destroyed by 12 of them." His face twisted with rage. "They are not human. They are abominations. No natural species could produce such things." "Perhaps that is true, but the humans did produce them. They created weapons capable of defeating our best warriors, and they chose to hide them rather than use them. They chose peace when they could have chosen conquest." She leaned closer to the barrier. "That is something your ambition could never understand. Sometimes the strongest choice is not to fight." She left him alone in his cell, listening to his curses echo off the walls. The Galactic Council demanded answers. Representatives from 100 worlds sent messages to Earth, demanding to know the truth about the Genesis program. Some were frightened, some were angry, some were simply curious. All of them wanted to understand what humanity had been hiding. Daniel was asked to testify before a special committee. Went with him, refusing to be separated. The committee chamber was vast, filled with screens showing the faces of diplomats and officials from across the galaxy. They stared at Daniel with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. "You claim to be human," one representative said, "a creature with 4 arms and scales instead of skin. But no human could do what you did. You killed thousands of soldiers in a single day. You survived wounds that should have been fatal. You are clearly not natural." Daniel stood at the center of the chamber, calm and steady. "I was human once," he said. "I was born on Earth to human parents. I grew up in a human city, went to human schools, had human friends. Then my species faced extinction, and I volunteered to become something more." "So you admit that you are artificial, engineered?" "I admit that I was enhanced, changed, made into something stronger than I was born to be." He looked around the chamber at all the watching faces. "Is that not what every species does? You wear armor to make yourselves harder to kill. You build ships to make yourselves faster. You create weapons to make yourselves more dangerous. I am simply a weapon that walks and talks and thinks. A weapon that could destroy armies." "Yes." The chamber was silent. "Then you are a threat," another representative said. "A threat to every species in the galaxy." Daniel smiled, and there was something sad in it. "Perhaps I am. But I am a threat that has spent the last 5 years growing vegetables and helping other soldiers find peace. I am a threat that married an alien princess and learned to cook her favorite meals. I am a threat that wants nothing more than to live quietly with the woman I love." He looked at, and she saw the man she had married looking back at her. "I did not ask to become what I am. None of us did. We volunteered because our people needed us, and we have spent every day since then trying to find a reason to keep living. The war gave us purpose. Peace took that purpose away. We hid ourselves because we wanted to be human again, even if we knew we never truly could be. He turned back to the committee. So yes, I am dangerous. Yes, I could destroy armies if I wanted to, but I do not want to. I want to go home and plant tomatoes and listen to my wife complain about the rain. That is all I want. That is all any of us want. The chamber remained silent for a long moment, then stepped forward to stand beside her husband. I am princess of the empire, she said. I married this man for peace, expecting to find a simple human soldier. Instead, I found something far more complex, a warrior who hates war, a weapon who dreams of peace, a monster who showed me more kindness than most I have known. She took Daniel's hand and held it up for everyone to see. This is what humans are. They create terrible things, but they also create beauty. They fight with unmatched violence, but they also love with unmatched depth. They are capable of great destruction and great compassion, often in the same person. She looked at her husband, at the man who had changed everything she believed about the universe. The question is not whether humans are dangerous. Every species is dangerous. The question is whether you want them as enemies or as friends. She waited for the committee to respond. The debates in the Galactic Council lasted for 3 months. Representatives argued day and night about what to do with humanity and their Genesis soldiers. Some wanted to destroy Earth before the humans could create more weapons. Some wanted to form alliances and gain access to human technology. Some simply wanted answers that no one could provide. Attended every session with Daniel at her side. She watched the fear in the eyes of diplomats who looked at her husband. She heard the whispers when they walked through the corridors of the council station. Monster, abomination, threat. They did not see the man she knew. They only saw what he could do. It was exhausting. On the 43rd day of debates, a representative from a species called the asked Daniel a question that silenced the entire chamber. You claim to want peace. You claim to want a quiet life, but you are a weapon designed to kill. How can a weapon ever truly be at peace? Daniel stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by watching eyes. He was quiet for a long moment before he answered. I remember every person I have ever killed. The chamber went even more silent. Every face, every name when I knew it, every sound they made when they died, I carry them with me always like stones in my chest. There are thousands of them now, thousands of stones. He looked down at his hands, the hands that had killed so many. I did not choose to become what I am, but I chose to keep living after I became it. I chose to find meaning in something other than destruction. Every day I wake up and choose to be more than a weapon. Every day I fail a little, and every day I try again. He looked up at the representative. That is how a weapon finds peace, not by pretending to be something else, not by forgetting what it is, but by choosing every single day to be something more. The debates continued, but something had changed. The representatives looked at Daniel differently after that, not with less fear, but with something like understanding mixed into it. On the 90th day, the council voted. Humanity was granted full membership in the galactic community, not because they were trusted, but because the alternative was worse. The council recognized that humanity had been attacked without justification, had defended itself effectively, and had chosen peace when they could have chosen conquest. The Genesis program was officially acknowledged. Its surviving members were offered whatever lives they wished to live, with the full protection of Earth's government. Most chose obscurity, just as Daniel had years before. They wanted to disappear into normal life and try to forget what they were. Only 3 chose differently. Samuel Burke became an advisor to the military, helping to train new soldiers without creating more like himself. Became a negotiator for difficult situations, using her unique perspective to find solutions that others missed. Peter simply vanished, though occasional reports suggested he was helping refugees in distant star systems. Daniel chose to go home. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks, spent most of it staring out the windows at the passing stars, thinking about everything that had happened. Her life had changed completely in less than a year. She had gone from being a princess to an alien wife to the partner of humanity's most dangerous weapon. She did not regret any of it. Daniel found her in the observation deck on the last night before they reached Earth. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her. "The future." She turned to look at him. "What do we do now? Everything is different. The whole galaxy knows what you are. We cannot go back to our quiet life in Portland." "Why not?" She blinked. "Because everyone knows, because they will never see you as just a gardener again. They can see me however they want. It does not change who I am." He reached out and took her hand. "I am still Daniel Cole. I am still the man who married you and taught you to make terrible rice and held your hand when the nightmares came. The galaxy knowing my secrets does not change any of that. But the attention, the fear, the people who will hate you because of what you are. There have always been people who hated me, people who feared me. That is not new." He smiled, and it was the warm smile she had fallen in love with. "What is new is having someone to share it with, someone who knows everything about me and chooses to stay anyway." Felt tears prickling at her eyes. She was a warrior princess, trained since childhood to show no weakness. But she had learned in her time on Earth that tears were not always weakness. Sometimes they were strength. "I love you," she said. She had never spoken the words before. They felt strange on her tongue, a human phrase for a human emotion that did not traditionally acknowledge. Daniel's eyes widened, then softened, then filled with light. "I love you too," he said. "I have loved you for months. I was afraid to say it, afraid that if I did, something would take you away." "Nothing is going to take me away." "I know." He leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers, a human gesture of affection that she had learned to appreciate. "I know." They returned to Portland on a gray morning, the sky heavy with clouds that promised rain. The neighborhood had been rebuilt in their absence, new houses standing where the old ones had burned. His house was gone, replaced by a small memorial garden. But herself was waiting for them. She stood on the sidewalk in front of their house, small and fragile and absolutely unafraid. When she saw them get out of the transport, her wrinkled face broke into a smile. "About time you two came home," she said. "I have been waiting for weeks." Ran to her and embraced her carefully, mindful of her fragile human bones. "We thought you were dead. Your house was destroyed." "I was in my basement, safest place in the neighborhood apparently," patted her back. "Now stop fussing and come inside. I made cookies." The house was exactly as they had left it, minus some scorch marks on the exterior that had been repaired. Their garden had been tended in their absence, the vegetables growing strong and healthy. Someone had even planted new flowers along the walkway. "The neighbors helped," explained when asked. "We all watched the news, saw what Daniel did. They wanted to do something to thank him, so they took care of your home until you came back." Daniel stood in the doorway of his house, looking at the garden he had planted, the home he had built, the life he had created. His eyes were wet. "They should be afraid of me," he said quietly, "after what they saw." "Some of them are a little," admitted. "But mostly they are grateful. You saved their lives. You saved their families. A little fear is a small price to pay for that." She handed him a cookie and pushed him toward the kitchen. "Now sit down and eat. You look like you have not had a proper meal in months." Life returned to something like normal. Daniel went back to his work with the Veteran Affairs Department, helping other soldiers find peace. Continued learning about Earth, about humans, about the strange and wonderful species she had married into. Came over for card games every Thursday evening and complained about the rain every chance she got. Sometimes reporters came, wanting interviews. Sometimes officials visited, wanting consultations. Sometimes ordinary people stood outside their house, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary soldier who had killed an army alone. Daniel dealt with all of it patiently. He gave interviews when necessary, helped with official business when asked, and smiled at the curious crowds until they went away. He never complained, never showed frustration, never let the attention change who he was. One evening, about 3 months after their return, found him sitting in the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He was watching the colors change with a peaceful expression on his face. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting beside him. "About how strange life is." He turned to look at her. "A year ago, I was just a man pretending to be normal, hiding from my past, trying to forget what I was. Now the whole galaxy knows my secrets, and I feel more normal than ever. Perhaps because you are no longer hiding. Perhaps being known is easier than being hidden. Perhaps," he reached out and took her hand, "or perhaps it is because I finally have someone to share everything with, the good parts and the bad parts, the human parts and the parts that are not human at all." Leaned against him, feeling his warmth against her alien skin. "Do you still wish you could forget what you are?" He was quiet for a moment, then he shook his head. "No, if I forgot what I am, I would forget why I became it. I would forget the people I saved, the lives I protected, the reasons I keep fighting. I would forget the day I married you, the months I spent falling in love with you, the moment you told me you loved me back." He turned and looked at her with those warm brown eyes that had changed her entire universe. "I am a monster, I am a weapon, I am something that should not exist, but I am also your husband, and that is the part I never want to forget." Smiled and leaned up to kiss him. "You are not a monster," she said. "You are a man who has done monstrous things for noble reasons. There is a difference. So you keep telling me, and I will keep telling you until you believe it." The sun continued to set, painting their small house and their small garden in golden light. Somewhere in the distance, children laughed and dogs barked and life went on, ordinary and wonderful and strange. Daniel Cole, the living weapon who had killed thousands, sat with his alien wife and watched the sky change colors. He thought about all the battles he had fought, all the blood he had spilled, all the death he had caused. Then he thought about cookies and terrible rice, and the tomatoes growing in their garden. He decided that, given the choice, he would take the tomatoes every time. Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, countless species were learning to see humanity in a new light, not as a primitive race to be conquered, but as a dangerous friend to be respected. It was not a perfect peace, but it was a beginning. And for Daniel and, sitting together in their garden as night fell over Portland, it was exactly enough.